Wonderful and good morning, Baton Rouge. We are really excited to be a part of the symposium this morning, and I just want to thank you for having us. My name is Mo Barboza. I serve as a national consultant to the NEKC Foundation on community safety. With us, we have a distinguished panel of folks who I hope will help to enlighten your your understanding of treatment for intervention work. I'll do a quick introduction now, and we'll have a chance for folks to tell us who they are and how they're coming to this work and answer some specific questions. Throughout the session, you'll be able to add your questions by completing the note cards that are on your table, and those will be collected, and we'll be doing a question and answer period at the end of the session. Helen, I wonder if we're getting feedback, if we could turn the mic off in the room. Thank you. Wonderful. So just to do a quick round of introductions, we have Dr. Charlene Haling Williams, who is a counseling psychologist. She is working with the street level intervention work in Washington, D.C. You'll hear a lot more about her work when we go to those questions. We have a good brother, Akila Shirels, who wears many hats, but he is a national trainer in this work of community-based violence intervention. And okay, we're going to pause. I think there's a issue in the room. Some tech problems. Okay, we're going to pause. Okay. Well, these things happen. So while they're setting up there, I just want to thank the folks who have joined us in person during this pandemic, and recognizing that this disease pandemic is a doubling of burden on certainly the urban communities and many Black communities. And we've been struggling with a slow motion pandemic in terms of gun violence in our communities for a long time. And some of the struggles of what we are experiencing now are related to both these things happening in the communities. Certainly want to acknowledge that there's been a disproportionate impact on our communities, and that in many of our urban communities and in many of our Black communities, we're seeing the double impact of gun violence going up during this COVID season, and lots of the tragedies that come from that. So, all right, we'll get back in the session. Looks like the tech problems have been overcome, and thank you for those on the ground who are helping to make this happen. We were in the middle of just doing some quick introductions. I'll go quickly so we can get into the meat of the agenda. Brother Akila Shirels, I mentioned, has several hats, including doing some national training. Brother Alfred Gardner has been working with our friends in Atlanta, just south of downtown Atlanta neighborhoods, who historically have had some of the highest rates of homicide and violence, and has helped to build a healing structure and to stand up the violence intervention work there. Brother A. Reek Johnson, who will join us back, he is standing in for one of our panelists. Our brother Calvin Pepp was supposed to join us from New Orleans. Unfortunately, there's a number of shootings there last night, and they had an emergency meeting this morning that he had to attend. This work of street level intervention does not respect a 9-to-5 time, or nor clock, does not think about that you need to sleep or that you had a long day. It is 24 hours, and many folks here will attest to how important it is to be able to respond in the moment. So Brother Reek Johnson will who is now with Cure Violence Atlanta, will reflect on his time as a practitioner in the hospital-based intervention program. Brother Deming Durden is the executive director of the Newark Community Street Team. He is a longtime practitioner, rose up there. I was laughing with him earlier that all the pictures I saw were when he was on the street, and now he's the executive director, so it's great to have him involved. Our good sister Chitara Alexander, she is a violence interrupter in Atlanta. She's going to be able to give us a on-the-ground perspective, and we may be joined by at least one other practitioner as well. So I'm going to go ahead and move us forward, and just to make sure that we're all on the same page, we're talking today about street-level intervention, the work that folks do on the ground, reaching some of the people who are at the highest risk of being engaged in community violence, gun violence, both as victimizers and victims, knowing that both of these folks are part of our community and that we are trying to create a better future for all of them, one that does not include gun violence and the scourge that it's been in our community. So I'm going to start with Brother Deming Durden. And the Newark Community Street Team is a different kind of work. So I'm just going to ask you, what makes this Newark Community Street Team work different from, say, a social worker or a community organizer? How is this different, brother?
So many ways I think it's different. I think it's a holistic approach to, empowering people. We try to make people the answer, to their problems. NCST, we work with people who have experienced, systematic violence, for forever, for centuries, and that experience, that trauma that they've experienced, make them or make us untrusting of a lot of the traditional ways that people receive help, namely social workers and things like that. Social workers sometimes are looked at in our community similar to, law enforcement, similar to, the practices that have been done on us with doctors and other, institutions that have practiced institutional racism against our community. So they may not be traditionally accepted. So we have, a cadre of folks that we've trained in violence intervention and prevention, if you will, and that's a whole another skill set, I think, that is different from what social work is traditionally looked at. And then as far as organizing, we do street organizing, but or community organizing, but that is not our focus in our training as much as is, preventing violence and getting healing services to our folks.
All right. I was joking with you earlier that you came up through the ranks. You were a street level interventionist and kind of became a coordinator and now the executive director. Can you speak a little bit about the importance of having that on the ground experience and leading one of these sites, and what you've gained in having that breadth of experience?
Yes, sir. We like to say, we are our demographic. I've come from that particular background myself. Raised in a single parent home, raised by my mom. Went to prison when I was 19 years old. Was in prison for 22 years. Uh, had some profound experiences while I was in there, and just decided to do a lot of introspection and figure out, another way to go. And while I was in there getting that training, when I came out, it was at a wonderful time. We have a new mayor, Mayor Rouge at that particular time, and he was being elected and came up with this particular program that, I think the city was ready for. And when we went out there in the community, I started out, as you said, as an outreach worker, and having that experience. And I still go out every day in the field. Just yesterday, doing the community walk. Thursday, another community walk, and just having that relatability. There's something called like being a credible messenger, and just being able to understand the dynamics of the streets and what everybody, the trauma that everybody is experiencing, allows us to kind of navigate better than one that's coming from the outside and parachuting in.
All right, thank you, brother. I have, and I'm really happy to have one of your board members with us, Brother Keela Sherrills, who is also a national figure and trainer in this community-based violence intervention work. Brother Keela, I'm just going to ask you if you can expand on what Brother Damon did there in terms of who are credible messengers and why is it important that they are the people in this work?
Appreciate you, Mo. Traditionally, when we say police, and we say public safety, people say police. And there's this idea that law enforcement actually owns the public safety domain. But the reality is that, law enforcement and police are only one aspect of the public safety process. Public safety is a shared strategy. You can't have public safety without the public. And it's been our vision and belief that we have to have a trained, set of citizens and residents who understand public safety policy to engage the public safety process, right? And so, the work that we've done in Newark has been really phenomenal, and I'm just really fortunate and humbled to have worked with Brother Damon for the past 6 years. The mayor tapped me to come from LA to Newark to build out the Newark Community Street Team, put systems in place, infrastructure, and turn it over to the local folks. And it's been a profound work. As I said, public safety has to have a complementary strategy to law enforcement. Because when we talk about reimagining public safety and police reform, it's not just about procedural justice training for the cops and de-escalation training for their staff. It's about building and investing in infrastructure and community, because community is going to have more intelligence than law enforcement will ever have. And when you utilize a relationship-based approach, you're able to kind of stand in the gap, intervene in some of the domestic issues that actually lead to violence. When we first did our study in Newark, we discovered that 62% of the homicides that happened in the city started out as domestic disputes. And so training, residents in conflict resolution and mediation and de-escalation strategies, trauma-informed approaches, deploying them in the community has been, a game changer. Just to give you a quick statistic, when we started our pilot in 2014, Newark had 113 murders, that year. Last year, we had a 6-decade low. We had 51 murders in the city. And in our targeted area where we've been working at, in the South Ward and the West Ward in Newark have been traditionally the most violent communities in the city, for decades. Last year, we had a negative 48% reductions in homicides in the city. We've changed the narrative around what public safety is. And now we have the law enforcement calls us and gives us intelligence, and because there's a pretty high threshold in terms of arrest and prosecution for crime, right? And so, as Brother Damon always says, our work is not to arrest people, it's to arrest the situation and the circumstances. And so, I'm humbled to be a part of that team.
All right. So our audience in Baton Rouge, you're going to hear a lot more from Brother Akila later on after the panel. So I just want to ask Brother Damon if you could just give us one little minute more on what it's meant to have these credible messengers doing this work. What does it mean to have people who maybe did some of the harm now do some of the healing?
Oh, it's been wonderful as both a healing experience for the individuals themselves and for the community. We have one brother that's on our high risk intervention team from an area in the city, and he's caused much havoc probably in that particular area. And so to be able to go back and give life back to that area in a way where he's guiding younger people, he has a whole movement that he calls flow, and where he's able to guide younger people. He's brought maybe at least 20 young people to our Sentinel training program, where we educate them in civics and everything and knowing their rights, but also the history of the city. So you see that connection of credible messengers being able to change the dynamic in the community the same way they may have been the menaces to the community. Now they're the mentors for the community.
All right, all right. Thank you, brother. Appreciate your perspective and thank you for your wonderful work there. We're going to shift gears here and talk to Dr. Charlene Hayden Williams, who is a counseling psychologist working with the street level intervention programs in Washington, D.C. Can you tell us a little bit about the role that you play and specifically the importance of trauma and behavioral health in this work? And then I'm going to come back to you and ask you a little bit about your expectations for Baton Rouge as you are a BR native.
That's right. Good morning, Baton Rouge. Good morning to my hometown. Thank you to Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome. You guys have an excellent servant leader in our mayor. I say our mayor because home is where the heart is. My parents are there. I'm a proud native of North Baton Rouge, 70807. Stand up. Good morning. So yes, I am a counseling psychologist by training. I am in Washington, D.C. And it's important to sort of start at the beginning, right? I knew at the beginning of my training that the who matters. And there is a component of this that we have to own as an and both. It is both a policy concern and a practice concern. It is both government and community that's required to do this work. It's required that we do both credible messengers and violence interventionists, and also social scientists and advocates who understand how to both truly intervene, change behavior, because we want to change behavior and we need behaviorists at the table to at least inform that practice, and then evaluate it along the way as scientist practitioners. And so that has been the lens through which I have trained and worked for close to 20 years now. So with that, in the district, I have been privileged to co-found Community Wellness Ventures as a public health agency serving exclusively low-income residents in the highest needs wards of the district. The District of Columbia is broken up into 8 wards. Ward 8 is the most violent ward. It's the most high need ward, or the highest needs ward of the district. Lowest levels of employment, highest levels of substance use, all of the factors that we know that contribute related to poverty, right? So the goal of CWV is to intervene at all of those entry points. And with violence being a public health concern and issue, we have a dedicated team that is led by me around violence intervention, and also working with returning citizens to elevate this conversation and show some real outcomes around what works. A few things that we've been able to do to model how this partnership can really work is that we've partnered with the Mayor's Office on Neighborhood Safety and Engagement in DC, which is the Safer, Stronger DC office. We piloted and have now implemented for 4 cohorts what's called the Pathways to Wellness program. There's a Pathways program within that office that works exclusively with young men who have returned from prison, all of whom have had gun charges in some way, shape, or form. However, the piece that was missing, we had the credible messengers, we had the violence interventionists, we had the job training, and a number of other social supports around aligning resources. It kept saying something is missing. What was missing was the piece around healing and exploring how to replace responses to triggers, no pun intended, in the community that we know are going to take place. And so we layered on and showed how if you put a satellite clinic and be lock and step in the very fabric, not in addition to, not separate and apart from, not in conflict with, but if we really lift up our credible messenger team and our violence intervention team and our behavioral health team as one and the same, realizing that to be holistic, we've got to do that in true practice and model that for our folks. We'll see some outcomes. Folks said the guys won't want to do that. They won't want to talk about mental health stuff. They don't, and I can tell you that we had over a 98% compliance rate. These young men had 1 hour of individual, hour of individual, what we call a wellness hour. Sometimes you have to change up the language, and that's fine. You don't want to call it counseling or mental health. A wellness hour, a checkup from the neck up, a consistent focus on healing and moving forward, progress, right? So hurt people, and heal people, heal people. And they had an hour of group therapy called Trauma, Race, and Place. So how do we speak truth to power around what it means to be, in our instance exclusively, a Black man in the District of Columbia, a Black man in America, how being in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people changed the trajectory of your entire life. And so walking those things back and having that work led by a colleague of mine who's a Black man and also a counseling psychologist who understands the role of context and how things around us can really impact how we react and ultimately how the world reacts to us or how community reacts to us. And so I'll stop there. I know we'll come back to it, but I'm very excited. We've also partnered with the Mayor's Office on Returning Citizens, some of the Cure Violence teams here out of the Attorney General's office, and really sought out this work. And we are, the final thing I'll say is we're very excited that we are heading up the first ever randomized controlled trial to evaluate the role of cognitive behavioral therapy on reducing violence in DC through the Family Survivors and Violence Intervention Programs. So the next of kin and those people who, so as you mentioned, sort of victimizers and victims or survivors and of violence in the community, looking in partnership with the government. The mayor's office, again, has a team of research evaluators, community wellness ventures to do the actual practice, and the mayor's office on neighborhood safety and engagement to provide the actual participants. And so we'll have some real science to stop just, talking about it, but really showing what works.
All right. Thank you, Dr. C. As you can tell, the BR native is definitely about it. Just wanted to ask folks, if you have any questions for any of the speakers so far and throughout the session, you can fill out those note cards and pass them up. You can also, we're in 2020, you can also text your questions to area code 225-427-5005. That's area code 225-427-5005. All right, if you want to text those questions, if you don't want to write them down on a note card. Dr. C, I'm just going to ask you if you can give us just a quick 60-second version of why you think violence intervention at the street level coupled with these kinds of services would be really important for Baton Rouge.
So I'll give you a quick anecdote. Growing up, and I'm sure for folks in the room, anytime you travel somewhere and you say you're from Louisiana, people talk about New Orleans. And how far is it from New Orleans? Well, there was a shift. Probably about 10 years ago, I was, as you guys actually probably know, I was behind the fence, behind the wall in our secure detention facility with young folks around 17, 18-year-olds. And they started saying, "Oh, you from Baton Rouge? I know Baton Rouge." And I'm saying, "Oh goodness, why do you know Baton Rouge?" And it was because they were identifying with the levels of violence taking place in Baton Rouge, what they were hearing from some of the music, the raps about particular communities. And they wanted to know, was I from this part of town or that part of town and so on. And I said, wait a minute, we have elevated to the level of being associated with a high crime city and a city that is synonymous with danger and guns and so on and so forth. And no one's really asking me about New Orleans anymore. Not that it's, necessarily no longer relevant in the violent space. However, Baton Rouge is as well in ways that are really salient, even for young people in the District of Columbia. That being said, in short, everywhere that has pockets of systemic oppression and poverty yields violence and high needs around what we really see as people making a cry for help, and we see as the outcome of many years of being pressed down and having all resources, or as many resources as humanly possible, stripped away or limited. And so that being said, Baton Rouge has so many positive aspects and opportunities for communities to thrive. Once we get our arms around the opportunity to intervene successfully to slow down or reduce the levels of violence, we are going to see the fruits of the labor of all the people who've been really working on the ground to provide those opportunities really begin to bloom.
Thank you, Dr. C. I'm going to get you in trouble with your home folk real quick. What's your favorite place to eat in Baton Rouge?
I have to tell you, my favorite place to eat is no longer what it used to be. Anybody who really knows good seafood in Baton Rouge, it was always Ralph and Cacoo's, and it has changed. So now I pop in Karan's and Mike Anderson's, but we really eat at home. Folks know that people who can cook can just get the seafood at Tony's and go right home.
Okay, all right. I know I got you in all kinds of trouble. Thank you, Dr. Kaylin Williams, and for the education on where to go. We are really fortunate this morning. One of our presenters, Brother Calvin Pep from the New Orleans Cure Violence site, there were a number of shootings last night in New Orleans, and there's an emergency meeting that he had to go to, but we were able to call up and call into service our brother Eric Johnson, who is part of the Cure Violence site in Atlanta, but previous to this role, he was the interventionist in the hospital at Grady Hospital in Atlanta, the level 1 trauma center that sees almost all of the penetrating injuries in Atlanta, shootings, stabbings, etc. So he's going to pinch hit for PEP. And I'm just going to say that a lot of folks aren't familiar with hospital-based intervention work. And so if you could give us an overview of what that means to have a violence interrupter or interventionist in the hospital, and then tell us about this golden hour, the work that folks do in that space. So, Brother Eric Johnson.
Thank you, Mo. Greetings, everybody. So, like you said, my name is Eric, and for about 2.5 years, the program at Grady was up and running. And like he said, I was the hospital responder. Well, my title was community resource coordinator, and my specific role was whenever a gunshot wound patient presented to the hospital, I would go in their room during that golden hour. And the golden hour is that time where they come into the hospital where you have that critical moment, life stuff, like life changing. Like I'm sitting up here with 1 to how many ever bullet holes, in me. And that's the most opportune time to try to make a life change. So they call it the golden hour for those reasons. So I would go in during that time. But the good thing I must say about Grady is, like, y'all didn't work on the weekend. So if they came in on a Saturday or Friday night, by the time I came back to work on Monday, sometimes they would be gone. Just shout out to, all the surgeons that may be out there, but they do good work. So if they're there, I would go talk to them, try to get them to, build that rapport, see what's going on with them, try to get them to join up with Pivot. That was the name of our program. And by doing that, what I would do was get them connected with community partners, community. So I built it out to where we had different domains, right? So housing, education, jobs, life skills. So we had community partners in each of those domains. So if a young man or a young woman presented in the hospital that needed a GED, needed mental health counseling, needed a place to stay, I had partners in those different domains where I could reach out to them to be able to link them, with those partners to get those, to be able to provide those services. So, what I will say, and I don't want to be long-winded, but the thing I will say about the hospital-based piece is that it works, but it needs that community piece, right? It needs that community leg. And that's one thing that I saw working at Grady for the 2.5 years was I had some success, with enrolling patients and seeing some turnaround, but to be honest, it didn't have the complete success that it could have had we had Cure Violence, then. So That's what I'll say. I don't know if you want me to add more, but you can let me know, but I'll just pause there.
All right. Thank you, Brother Eric. I am going to ask you out a little bit more because I think folks are not familiar with what it would actually look like. Like, where do you step in? What's the relationship between the interventionist and the doctors, the nurses, the emergency room? Do you talk to the people who come to visit, the families, and so forth?
Sure.
Can you walk through that a little bit,
Yeah,
folks?
yeah. So all of the above. Doing this work, one thing that I realized is that one example I give you is a young man came in from a particular group. He and I was talking, building relationship. I was at bedside, right? So sometimes I pull up a chair. Well, often I pull up a chair. We may watch whatever's on TV for 20, 30 minutes, just shooting the breeze, building that rapport. So the nurse comes in and she's giving him his whatever she's giving him, and he and I are talking, and she looks and is like, "Oh my gosh, is he talking English?" And I was like, "Of course he's talking English. It's just slang. So I had to pull her to the side, and do some cultural competency. So I give you guys that brief story just to say, doing the work in the hospital, you're gonna have those moments where nurses, doctors, they're not culturally competent. They're not gonna understand the lingo. So I did a lot of that, a lot of advocacy work. So, for me, it starts there. So when they come into the trauma bay, making sure you have the relationship with the charge nurse, making sure who the doctor is, maybe that the trauma doctor is for the day, right? And then so when they go to the floors, building relationships also with the social workers on the floors, so my program was housing trauma, so it was a little different, for our hospital. So we had floor social workers as well, but building relationships with really everybody in the hospital, from even the environmental services, right? So the people who come in to clean the rooms, being nice to them, the people who coming in to bring their food, being nice to them, building rapport with them, and also modeling that behavior for the participants. That was something that was big for me in the hospital, where they could see, you catch more, flies with honey than you do vinegar, right? So that was the thing. That was for me. So it's on every level, and I was able to build relationships with, trauma surgeons who make, $400,000 or $500,000 a year, and they're just everyday people, but they've never been exposed to the level of trauma. Somebody mentioned, systemic trauma that a lot of these victims have been, and so there's a disconnect. And so my job was to help bring that disconnect closer as well.
Thank you, Brother Eric, and I really appreciate you walking that out and connecting it back to the trauma. And one of the things that you mentioned there was that role modeling for the participants or the possible participants. Can you talk a little bit about what it means to have somebody who has experiences like the people who are coming through be in that role of interventionist?
It makes all the difference. What I tell people is that, a lot of times, you're going to open up more, when you see somebody that looks like you, in the room, when you're talking about these things. And not only that, even in therapy, as a practitioner myself, I self-disclose, but, I think you have to use that kind of wisely, even in doing that, because sometimes it'll backfire. It won't normalize. It'll backfire. So, but I believe that, in my experience, a lot of these young brothers and sisters, when I come in the room, it's like a sigh of relief, like, man, you're not talking to me like they was talking to me. I can talk to you about, man, I'm having these nightmares. Is this normal? I can't sleep. Is this normal? Type deal. So it makes the world of a difference to know, look, I've been to prison. I ain't never been shot, but, I've had these traumatic experiences myself, and I've had to be able to overcome. And then, like you said, like I said, being that role model and letting them know that you can't do it by yourself. I didn't do it by myself. None of us can do it by ourselves. We have to have community. And that was another thing for me, is just letting these brothers know that together we can make it.
All right. Brother Eric, I didn't put any letters after your name, but it's important that folks understand the specific training that you had and your trajectory. Can you just tell us what those letters would be and what it means to have that in this work?
So I'm a licensed master level social worker, and I'm trained in EMDR, and I'm also trained in Trump TFCBT. So,
And I bring that up not to say that, you got to have these letters after your name and so forth, but some folks in our work, it's important that they have the mental health training and the social work training to be able to do some of that intervention, and that it doesn't matter where you came from, what your experiences are. It really matters the work that you put in. And thank you, Brother Eric, for the work that you've put in to be able to put yourself in a place to be able to support people, and then for the actual support that you've been doing. And thank you for this morning. I see people are starting to send in their questions. Again, you can fill out the note cards, or you can put it in the chat. I'm sorry, you can text those questions. That number was 225-427-5005, 225-427-5005. And please, when you send the questions, you can tell us who you want to answer those questions. That would be great. We're going to shift to talk a little bit more about the on-the-ground street level intervention. I'm going to start with our good sister, Chitara Alexander. She goes by Chi. Chi, you're a violence interrupter. What does that mean, and what does it look like on the ground, the work that you do? Like, where do you go? Who do you talk to? What does that look like day to day?
First off, good morning to everyone that is on the call, to my Atlanta family, to my Baton Rouge family, my DC family, everyone that is on the call. I'm honored to be able to be on this call and speak this morning. My day-to-day work, basically I am in the target areas every day. A lot of times with this work, is visibility is important. Being a credible messenger, as I heard someone speak on, is very, very important in this work, because the biggest thing to aid me and assist in the things that I do is the fact that I am a credible messenger. I am from the neighborhood, and having these relationships built, honored, and upheld is very important with my day-to-day work. So I don't have to bring it to me. I go to where everyone is. In my target area, I'm at your neighborhood stores, at your corner stores, on the block. If they on the basketball court, I'm on the basketball court. I'm just actively in the neighborhoods every day with individuals. And because of the relationships built, it makes it easier to meld relationships with those that may be high risk, those that a lot of people may be afraid to speak to. As a lot of people like to call your shooters and things, are people that are considered to be unsavory within these communities. So it makes it easy to identify the issues and knock down a lot of the issues, or kind of try to stop them before they fester and turn into acts of violence. So my day-to-day is literally on the ground in the neighborhood every day with individuals.
Can you talk a little bit more about those relationships? Like, where did that come from? Did you have these before? Did you start brand new? And then how do people see you as a violence interrupter, as a young woman working in this community?
Being okay. So a lot of relationships that I do have, they are relationships from the past and brand new. I build relationships with people every day. So and that comes through visibility as well. And a lot of times the thing that helped us with this work is, like I said, I am from the community. Being a person that has taken so much from, it makes it easy to give back. So I grew up in a street organization. So that also has helped me with the work that I do. But and in the process of that, I have relationships with many street organizations and just individuals within the community that all are vital and want to assist in the same type of work and want to see our communities thrive and change the mind state. A lot of times people don't understand, like, we make it an issue as social. No, it is a mental health issue. That's why the mental health aspect of this is so important, as Brother Avery Johnson speaks of, and the sister Hailing speaks of, because it's very important within this work, because people have to understand, yes, it's changing the mind state. So it makes it easier with the relationship that I pre-existing have, that also helps with the introduction to the new people and the new relationships that are melded or built.
All right. I just want to say that, as we were developing this work in Atlanta, when I met Sister Chi, everybody around her was like, yo, you got to get her. and not connection that she already had walking into this space, the credibility that she brings, and the ability to build relationships is really key. So appreciate you. Thank you for your work, and thank you for being with us this morning. Brother Leonard, I see you that you're on the move. I'm going to ask you if you can pull over and answer these questions, because we do not want you to be in danger in any way, shape, or form. So I'm going to give you a moment to get to a safe place. I'm going to skip to Brother Alfred, and I'll come back to you, Brother Leonard. All right? Brother Alfred, one of the distinguishing factors of the work in Atlanta is that this street level intervention is happening alongside some healing work that you've been doing in terms of healing circles in the community. Can you tell us about what it means to have these healing circles, what they are, how you've been doing them before and during COVID?
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us on this morning. I'll have a conversation later about, the relationship between Louisiana and Georgia, but we'll get to that later on. And y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. But we'll talk about that later, or around Thanksgiving, around November 22nd. So we'll talk about it. But nevertheless, the stars have truly been aligned for us. I think I'm gonna pull the truth out of Mo one day and say, listen, how did you all have this conversation about having an intervention piece to gun violence, but also a prevention piece, and what that looked like in terms of NPUV, which is our target area? And I say that because the healing circles provide just that. Is an intervention, in a sense, in a space to be able to present to residents in order to address the trauma that's attached to gun violence. Sometimes when we talk about therapy to folks of color, we kind of shy away from that, So we provide a space of healing to do just what will happen in a group therapy session. The other part of that piece is we train residents and stakeholders in the community to be able to facilitate these circles. And what we've learned, that folks are more inclined to come in and have a sit down talking about these headaches that I've been having, or me having to sleep with the lights on, or trying to hurry up and get home before it gets dark, due to the level of violence that takes place in the community, because it's somebody that they know, it's a face that they can relate to. And it just makes it more comfortable to be able to be vulnerable in that space. We have had we've built relationships with the elementary schools in the area so that we can provide this support to the parents. We're not trying to replace the PTO, but we work in collaboration with PTOs to be able to say, listen, here is a space that parents can kind of get to know each other and build support structures within the community to support one another. One of the ideas that came out of that in Mechanicsville is groups of parents taking turns and walking kids to school. Before that happened, kids was just walking to school by themselves. So now there's a network of parents that can text one another and say, hey, Monday and Wednesday this week, I got it. I'm gonna walk to school. Tuesday and Thursday, I got them. I'm gonna walk them from school back to the apartments. So it's just these safety measures and structures that has kind of been born out of these healing circles that's been intentionally placed throughout our target area. We also have partnered with Atlanta Victims Assistance so that we can have support groups in collaboration with Atlanta Victims Assistance to be able to support on a larger scale, not only our target area, but all of the victims that have lost loved ones, lost their child, mother, father, daughter, and able to provide that support to them overall. So that has helped us a lot as well. Throughout COVID, we had to kind of shift things, and that's a reality. What we also found through COVID, and I tell people all the time, COVID has definitely been a headache for everybody, but it's been some true blessings and ideas that have kind of been birthed through COVID. We have been able to go virtually, in a sense. which also makes folks more comfortable because it's more convenient. I can just click the link on my phone and tap into a space of healing. And what we also learned throughout that process is more of the workers need the healing space almost than our residents and our clients. So when COVID first kicked off, you know, school, you can't go to school, so children were at home. You couldn't go to work, so now you're working from home. And then there was a sense of imbalance that folks was experiencing, and they was just dialing in and tapping into the healing circle, and it was like, man, this is crazy. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to balance this. I don't know how to do different. You know, so it was just a space and camaraderie that came along with that, and it was a support system for everybody. So that was something that was very important, that was birthed in a sense, because we didn't necessarily have the concentration on the workers and the staff and how to have that balance, because the work that we do is just so overwhelming at times. So that's what's been going on. Like I said, the stars has been aligned for us. We have an intervention in healing circles and trauma response that's built out of a residential trained stakeholders, but we also have the beauty of having the prevention side of a Cure Violence Atlanta team that's built of outreach workers and violence interrupters, and a management team that work cohesively together to make sure that we're addressing major incidents and minor incidents in the community.
Thank you, Brother Alfred. We got about 2 minutes more. I just want to sneak our Brother Leonard in to give his quick perspective, and then we're going to go to the questions from the audience. Brother Leonard, you came on just in time, unfortunately, for the response to the murder of Rayshard Brooks in the neighborhood that Cure Violence Atlanta works in. Can you tell us a little bit about the role of violence intervention, Cure Violence, in the days just after that murder of the brother at the Wendy's parking lot? And I'll give you about 90 seconds to give us way too much story, but I appreciate you being here. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Leonard Dungy. I'm the outreach supervisor at Cure Violence in Atlanta. And my first day, or I think it was my first week, was the week of the Rayshard Brooks shooting. And that was our first assignment, technically, for this office. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but after that happened, there was a white supremacist who drove by the Wendy's and shot onto the premises and shot into the crowd. A lady was hit. It didn't make too much news, but that was the reason why those guns showed up at the Wendy's. And so, when I got on site, crisis intervention at that point. We had 30, 40 of our participants, or young, let's just say young people, who were all carrying AR-15s. And the even more so than that, there were several different gang sets on the Wendy's. And as far as the crisis intervention, the first thing I had to do was find out who was in charge. And that happened to be a young lady by the name of Lady A, which is Rayshard's older sister. And then just work from there. I used my credibility. I have credibility nationwide. I'm never been affiliated with a gang, but I have associated with all of them during my past. So I have some, let's just say I have some street credibility on a national level. I know some people in some high places as far as gangs are concerned. And so what I did was I just approached the population there just to kind of assess what was going on. We at Cure Violence, it's a public health approach. We treat it like an epidemic. So the first thing I had to do was stop the transmission of violence. And then the next move was to prevent the spread of it. And the way I did that was, like I said, addressing who was in charge, and not taking control, but just taking a leadership role, because it was nothing but kids. And then what happened was we turned it into a place of memorial. So we want to have a cookout atmosphere around here. And for that time that I was there, out of all those gang members that were there, and all of them had guns, not one of them shot at another one. So there was no gang violence. There was literally no violence on that site until, unfortunately, what happened on the 4th of July. But that was the role there. It was just to find out, what was going on, who was in charge, I prevented the spread, and last but not least, I changed group norms. And with our community partner here in Atlanta, I was able to hire people. I was able to meet their immediate needs, and that's the most important thing when dealing with our population or demographic, if you have it, is that we have to meet their immediate needs. We can't ask a young man or a young lady to put a gun down if there's other issues going on. You don't know why he's holding it. You don't know what his purpose behind it is. Are you afraid it's a protection? Or you trying to go, get some money so you can feed your family or, provide for your baby? And so the first thing we must do is, approach them and meet their immediate needs. And then we can move forward to the other aspects of what we're talking about today, such as AREAC, and Alfred was speaking of the healing circles and, the mental health assessments. First, we got to get them to ground zero. And so my experience at the Wendy's, that's what happened. That's how I did it. Got 90 seconds, Mom?
You did well, brother. You did well. And thank you so much. Thank you from a nation for the work that you did in that space in those days just afterwards. Brother Akil, I'm going to bring you back into this. Just going to ask you if you could talk about what are some of the critical first steps in establishing this kind of work in a community. And I'll give you about a minute or so on that because I want to bring Brother Darden in on that as well. What are some critical first steps?
Some of the critical first steps is identifying the credible messengers in a respective community. And then, sharing out the frame around, this work. As Brother Leonard was just saying, that, we work through the public health frame, that violence is a public health issue. And that one of the things that has happened in our respective neighborhoods is that trauma has been allowed to foster, to ripple, right? And impact people's lives in a way that has debilitated them. And so, it's about identifying the credible messengers. Then it's about building infrastructure. It's, putting systems in place and infrastructure, educating people about, about the work, setting up, because it's two aspects of it, right? It's the business of community-based intervention. And then also there's the actual, service that you provide in a respective community. Law enforcement, it's hundreds of millions of dollars to provide safety in our community. And we know that, a large percentage of homicides are unsolved. And law enforcement in most cases are a response unit. 80% of cops don't live in the respective communities in which we live in. And so it's important that we understand the context around public safety as a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and learn the business of community-based public safety, because when we're talking about jobs and entrepreneurship and opportunities, this is one of them, and this is a field, a profession that can actually be handed down to multiple generations. And it's something that we actually own, yes, sir.
Thank you. Brother Darden, can you jump in there, and what else do folks need? What are some of those critical first steps to establishing this kind of work? How do you go about establishing that street team in the community?
Yes, sir. One of the things that is critically important is training your team so that you have standard operating procedures that you work from. And so we're not just going in the field, just kind of willy-nilly, just talking to folks. Another thing is identifying, based off of data, those are hotspots in our community. And, prevention is something that, I don't know if we've really been speaking about, but, one of the things that we do in this city is try to prevent a lot of the incidents, and understanding that historically this area may be beefing with this area in the why. Why are they beefing? Then trying to get to those two different areas and trying to quell that particular beef, so there won't be things that continuously come up in the community.
All right, thank you. Chia, are you still with us? So I'll make sure you're there. We're missing your video. So I'll just ask, good. All right, because we got a question for you. Folks want to know what's the process for this violence interruption? How does it eliminate acts of violence? Like, specifically, what does it look like on the ground level for the the interactions with people who might be people who do violence, and then are you referring them to services and resources, or are you referring people to law enforcement?
I'm sorry, I don't know if you saw my face or not. Okay.
Tell us what your face said. Tell us what your face
I
said.
would never refer anyone to law enforcement.
That's right.
Never. No, that is the purpose of us having a cure violence team. The beauty to it, like working with community partners. A lot of times it's assessing the issues that are needed. Like he stated, sometimes we don't, but through building these relationships, we can understand. Like I said, it's a more of a mental aspect, and not just always. A lot of people, if you get to know people, you understand the reasons why they do the things that they do. It's not always out of the fact that they just want to be out here doing crime. Sometimes you don't know if someone has lights in their household or things like that. So it's about building relationships and accessing the needs that they do have. So in here, being out here in the field or whatever, or doing the on the ground work, you get to assess that, and I send them to our community partners or within our network or within our a program. We have our outreach workers, so we can access these things and get them the help that they may need. Because say you may need a job, so okay, let's see if we can get you into something. You don't have any trades, let's get you in a program where we can get you trades, get you something, so you're not out here in the streets, so that we can change the norm or the way that they think about the things that they are doing. I would never refer anyone to the law enforcement. Those are to be very, 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 very clear about that first.
I think your face was repeated across all the folks on the screen,
So
but it's important that we ask that question. I really appreciate whoever put that question up, because this street level intervention work, the credibility of the people doing this work is that they are not in league with law enforcement. Doesn't mean that you're acting against folks, but you are working for the community and in the benefit of the community, and not specifically with law enforcement. If you lose that, you lose the ability to intervene. And so much of what folks have been talking about here is, if you have the relationships, then you can actually get in front of some of these incidents by being in the know about where the rumble is coming from, where the smoke is before the fire shows up. So I really appreciate it. Chi, you want to say one more thing, and then I got to ask Dr. C one question. Go ahead.
Like you said, it's not a thing of speaking against the police. It's a thing of building trust within our own communities. A lot of time, like if we speak on credibility, you have to have credibility to do this work. If they feel that you are law enforcement within this day and age and everything that is going on, especially with our people, our Black and brown people, there has been a distrust with law enforcement. So if you are viewed as that, it's not going to be easy to do this work at all. So, yeah.
Dr. C, there's a lot of folks who want to ask you some questions. One of the questions that came up is, how does the partnership maintain its level of commitment, funding, MOUs, etc.? How do people stay committed to doing this work?
Well, there are a couple of ways. So one thing, and I didn't get a chance to go into it before, I think it's important to mention, I was kind of heading in that direction when I was saying, as a public health agency, why it was important. So this is our social justice fight on this side of the house in terms of public health. DC allows for Medicaid and Medicare recipients to receive comprehensive human services through the vein of behavioral health in an unlimited fashion. So for years at a time, one can receive community support, which looks like resource alignment, registering to vote, helping to get a job, getting food stamps, SNAP, TANF, WIC, housing, all of those things under the auspices of having a behavioral health treatment plan. You need a behavioral health agency licensed and credentialed, but it's not a grant and it's not a contract. And so that being said, we're really able to be a partner to so many in that way by saying just what Sister Chi was just saying in terms of community partnerships. Okay, sure, you might bring me in to have a contract for the 8 weeks of the program or to consult or to train the team. However, when the folks on the ground need that next step, who can we partner with on an ongoing basis? Who can we know that we hand the right hand to the left and say, these folks have the same mindset. These folks are committed to community. We are unapologetically for us and by us. We are unapologetically in alignment with what we know to be true in terms of an empowerment model and the fact that our folks are in these conditions of no doing of their own. And so this has been by design in a systemic way for generations that precede us. And so we can basically just essentially know that these would be the fruits of what has been sown. And so that being said, and I mean that from the outside, right? On the inside, we're often finding families doing the very best that they can with what they've been given. And so that's the purpose of community wellness ventures and agencies like ours, to be that stair step to continue the good work and to wrap our arms around community. And in terms of grants and contracts, that's the rat race that it always is, continuing to speak out about the importance of this work in this way, to continue to get dollars earmarked for it, so that in DC, Cure Violence Now will have some dollars, hopefully, for behavioral health. It wasn't until we continued to see that come up from the community as a need that we're able to talk about more, that then, because a lot of times our hands are tied, or grantees or folks with contracts, their hands are tied in terms of what they can do with the dollars because it's not there. So now when we shift that paradigm to say you can't do the work of trauma without being able to do the work of healing. And so I think that was sort of a roundabout way of saying it's, again, that both and. We both do grants and contracts and continue to make ourselves relevant by putting in that sweat equity, being willing to pilot programs, being willing to go to where the folks are. We are co-located throughout the district in public housing, in the mayor's office on returning citizens we've been in. We go into the office of neighborhood safety and engagement where they are, we are. And then in addition, we show good outcomes and are our own, have our own credibility around doing good work and doing what we say we're going to do.
All right. Thank you so much. We are right up on time. I want to mention that Cure Violence has been mentioned a number of times. Cure is the word cure, and it actually means about curing violence. It's not an acronym in any way, shape, or form. I do want to take this moment to thank all of our panelists, Brother Aquila, who's going to join you all for a little bit longer, Brother Damon Durst, who's coming to you from Newark with years of experience, our wonderful sister, Haling Williams from DC, and our team from Atlanta, Brother Garner, Brother Johnson, Sister Chia, and Brother Leonard. I've just been told that we've got an extra 10 minutes. So I would like to take a couple more questions and use that time to get folks a little bit more information. So one of the questions that's come up is, how is someone qualified to be a credible messenger? So it's not just that been to jail, you're a credible messenger. What makes you a credible messenger? I'm going to start with Brother Damien, if you could speak on that, and then we'll see if we can take a couple other answers from there. Go ahead, brother.
I think it's the community that you're from that actually substantiates your qualifications. And, the biggest qualification is the work that you do, that makes you credible. If you can go in the community and actually make a change and bring about healing, then you are that. I may have a license to say that I'm a, electrician or whatever, but if I haven't, been able to do any work like that, then, it goes for naught. So if I can actually go in the community and one can go in the community and change that dynamic that we're looking to change, then we become that credible messenger.
Mm-hmm. Brother Garner, you just hired a bunch of folks. Can you tell us a little bit about what it looked like in determining who those credible messengers were, and not just who was a credible messenger, but who was really ready to do this work?
Absolutely. For me, our target area is kind of big on making sure that opportunities are readily available for residents, and especially when it comes to employment. But the other part of it is for me is like if I haven't seen you out here, doing the work when we on these dark days, rainy, cold, and literally helping people, I really didn't approach you with the opportunity. The other part of it is being able to kind of listen to our mentors in terms of who they recommend for certain positions. So that was a key piece for us to be able to, we're out here. We already knew what was going on in the area. Let's provide some opportunity for individuals. And this is the thing that I love about, Credible Messenger program. Nationally, like this program and Cure Violence provides opportunities for individuals with lived experience to be able to say that I am the expert in this. You know what I'm saying? People are still being damned for going to jail, being in a gang, making bad decisions in the past. No second chance whatsoever. This opportunity, these programs allow people to use those experiences to be able to pull somebody else about the dirt and be able to show them a different way. So, experience, seeing people and listening to a mentor.
Appreciate you. And I know one of the things that we see nationally is this idea that, it's Credible Messengers doing different kinds of work. So you might have some people who are mentoring kids in a school or working with young people who are in juvenile justice, but the critical population in gun violence, most of the perpetrators of gun violence are in that 20 to 24-year-old range. And so important that we have credible messengers who have credibility with that population as well. And as Sister Chi mentioned, those relationships and the spaces that folks are already in is what qualifies you to do this. And so as BR is looking for who the folks might be in their work, you got to find the folks who are already doing this work on their own, outside of their present job, or if they even have a job now, and folks who, if the program wasn't there, would continue to do this for sure. I want to just make sure that we touch on a few of the other questions. Can someone talk a little bit about these strategies to meet young people, especially the younger ones in schools? Like what's been the work to really try to engage them when they're younger, when they're in schools? I don't know if there's somebody who wants to jump in on that. Leonard, wonderful brother, go ahead.
Yes, actually, the schools are one of the best places for intel because kids will tell you everything that's going on in the hood. So we generally know what's going on in the hood before school is over. So by the time they get home, someone is already in the community and knows what's going on. But the kids' way, in the past, obviously with COVID, we have yet to start. We have a relationship with the schools, but obviously they're not there. But really, what you want, where we approach it is, we want to deal with the bottom 10% of the school because they cause 90% of the problems. And so once you can focus in on that dynamic or that demographic, and you build rapport with them, it just makes the job a lot easier all the way around. Generally, I mean that 20 to 24, that I think today that it may be down to 16 to 24 as far as people who are actually young people who are actually perpetrating shootings and killings. So at least here in Atlanta. And so, but yeah, it's the school piece is very important. And what happens is it's a lot easier to show an outcome of bringing a child from an F to a D or a C than it is from them bringing them to a C to a B or a B to an A. It's a lot easier to do actually once you have their attention, and really, like you said, it's about establishing that rapport with them. So they do open up, so they do feel comfortable with you. We also serve as an alternative to the principal's office. In the past, we had a school program, and as opposed to if there was a redirection or someone skipping school, walking through the halls, or any kind of situation that could potentially send you to the office, send them to us, or send them to Cure Violence office. And so let Don G down there and send them to those guys down there and let them talk to them for a minute or hang out. But at the same time, as opposed to them skipping class now, they may not be in class, but they're getting some life skills or some kind of instruction or mentorship while they're in school. And so that's generally in the past how it has worked, at least as far as when I've been working with the school system.
Alfred, do you want to just mention how the partnerships are?
So one of the beautiful things that we've seen over summer and going into fall is our ability to hire folks, especially for that young adult age, 17 to 24. We've been able to provide employment for folks just out the gate, and the other part of it is our grants and monies and programs that we have for rent and utility and food. So we can give you a job, we can put food in your refrigerator, and we can keep your lights on and pay utility and rent. So those things right there for us has been, oh man, listen, I'm messing with these cats because they gave me a job. Not no BS job, good job, $20 an hour jobs. And we can get food for my parents, my family. And the other part of it is we got some more grace period because we can pay for your rent and your utility. So that's allowed us a space to kind of build rapport and be able to, connect with our mentees.
I got one question here that I want to make sure that we capture in the time that we have left is, folks really are interested in how does a street interventionist stop these situations from happening, arrest situations and circumstances? Are you stopping murders before they happen? Are you getting a shooter to leave the life of crime, finding alternatives to crime to meet their unmet needs? How are you really stopping this stuff from happening? And Chi, I'm going to start with you and then go to Brother Damon from there. Chi, you still with us?
My bad. I'm sorry. I was trying to unmute it. Usually my goal is to try to assess and stop beforehand. So the whole thing is to prevent crime. So that's really my goal. A lot of times trying to assess issues before they just like, what I'm saying, like a small sore festers. So if you catch it in the beginning process, if you can in the infantry level, then the whole goal is to stop. Then those that are potentially out there that like I say, high risk individuals, saying that we could change the norm and get them. I'm not going to say per se to get people out of an organization because we're a non-judgmental initiative. Because who are we to judge? The thing is to change your norm about the act of violence and get you away from it. But in the infantry level, the goal off top immediately is to try to prevent it from being any kind of violence at all.
I just want to make sure that we capture there that, the initial goals are around the violence, not the, getting people to like leave their gang affiliation, etc. It's really about let me change your violence behavior. And that, one of the wonderful things about street level intervention is that if you're doing this work well, it's really hard to count your impact because there's no way to count the murder that didn't happen. All right. But there are ways to count the interventions that you did, the conversations that you had, the levels in which violence have gone down. We've got a few minutes left. I want to let Brother Damon just talk to that same thing. What does it look like when you're actually doing the intervention? And then I'm going to go to Brother Keeler to close us out.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Just like our sister Chi said, that it's about prevention. It's about stopping it before it even happens. I think this is one of the things about safe passage programs, about being around the schools, because you get a lot of intel. Some of those small school conflicts can grow into other things, like just an argument or somebody said something, can evolve into now with these folks, and they'll tell maybe they older brother or sister. But by being in that area, listening, keeping an awareness, we can prevent something from even happening. And then those times where intervention is necessary, when an act have already been committed, then actually preventing retaliation. So you're still preventing. So the whole thing
Looks like we had a little drop in the web there, but I believe what Brother Damon was getting across was a drop in an intervention on retaliation, which is really important because you're stopping the cycle from continuing. Brother Kilo, in our last minute, I'm just going to ask you to also answer that question. What does it look like?
Yes, sir. As Brother Dane was saying, Safe Passage is a very important program. One, because most of the violence is happening in and around schools. Things happen in the community that spill onto the campus and then vice versa. And it also gives, credible messengers an opportunity to shift the image that the community had of them if they were engaged in violence in the past, So it's our forward-facing initiative, in terms of our city work. But also, I just wanted to say real quick that to Chi's point, that gangs aren't inherently negative. You know what I'm saying? Less than 3 to 5% of so-called gang members are actually committing violent crimes and murder. The gang is a surrogate family because they lost their nuclear family to the real killer, which is poverty, which is planned and organized in a capitalist system. Somebody got to be poor in order for somebody to be rich, basically. And so, we're not trying to get rid of gangs. What we're trying to do is to make the unwritten rules of the streets, written amongst those who choose to live that lifestyle. Because then you can transform the organization into a different type of power. So this is what our work has been.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all of our panelists. Thank you so much, Dr. Haling Williams from DC. Thank you so much, Brother Damon and Akila from Newark. I want to thank my Atlanta family for representing and holding it down. Really appreciate y'all. Alfred, I just want to tell you that the room said "who dat" to you a little bit earlier on when you mentioned that other thing. I knew that A was going to show up. I'm going to turn this over to our friends on the ground in Baton Rouge, Jessica and Mayor President Broom's staff, and have a wonderful rest of your morning and weekend. Thank you all. Peace to you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.